I want you to know that I think that you know your body better than anybody else.
Yeah.
You're going to know your baby better than anybody else. And so if that's instilled into them and that goes through the birth process, what do you think it's going to do for parenting?
You're listening to Be Well by Kelly LeVeque.
For the past 22 years, Lindsey Meehleis has worked in healthcare, being called into birth work 20 years ago and having witnessed thousands of women birth their babies. Trained traditionally and licensed through the medical board, she quickly learned that what is needed in the magic and mystery of birth and death can't be found in a book. She weaves great-grandma wisdom into our modern world. She has witnessed a drastic shift in healthcare since 2020 and looks forward to co-creating a new future of what medicine always was. She gets down to the nitty-gritty of life and everything it brings while illustrating the power that we have within, showing that birth, life, and death are pivotal rites of passage that deserve to be held in sacred reverence. Lindsey Meehleis. Yeah. This is actually round 2. People don't know that. You were my first sound fail.
Technically round 3, because we had to reschedule one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I mean, well, I've wanted to have this conversation and share this conversation so many times. You've been a midwife for decades. You've been an educator, really pushing the envelope when it comes to home birth and giving women the power to feel confident doing that with a team at home and making that team educated and confident to support that mom through her labor and delivery. So thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me. And I want to add on too, like, whenever we talk about home birth, like home birth is not the end all be all. And I really always like to come back to the place is like, I don't give a crap if you give birth outside with a deer or you have a scheduled C-section, as long as you're making informed choices and you feel safe in that choice. That's what's most important. And I feel like there's such a wide spectrum. There's a lot of judgment around that too, where people come to this place of feeling like, oh, well, I didn't have my natural home birth, or I didn't have, I had an epidural and I didn't want an epidural. Yeah. And so it's just
raise my hand for both.
Yeah. It's this place where it's like, you know what? All of those tools are there for a reason. Like, it's really nice that we actually have access to technology. Most women should be in a place of staying low risk. About 90% of the population should be able to birth without complication. We do screw things up when you go in without being educated. But if you're educated, that's the most important piece of it.
I feel like, this is your calling. But I don't think you always knew that until you had your first child. So can we talk about your background and the history and what inspired you to become a midwife and like really take your power back?
Of course. So it's interesting because I started really, really young, which historically speaking, if you look back at midwives usually became midwives after they had children. Like they were like the town wise woman, like the kind of like the crony old witchy woman that knew all the herbs. And when I was young, like 5 years old, 6 years old, I was like, all I want to do is be a mom and have kids. And like, that was just my whole passion. I started babysitting super young. I was like 10 years old, and like the neighbors would be like, Lindsey, come help, the baby's crying. And it was like, I was like the neighborhood baby whisperer. Yeah. And I think about that now, I'm like, a 10-year-old helping a baby like stop crying. And it's kind of funny because I would never go seek a 10-year-old for that. But and then I graduated high school, was going to go down like the med school pathway, jumped into becoming an emergency medical technician. I was driving an ambulance at the age of 17. I was working in the emergency room. And then at 20, I was pregnant. Totally unplanned. The greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I would never change a thing, but like, definitely not part of my life's path.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't familiar with home birth. I wasn't familiar with, all of these different things. And so I just kind of picked the OB that everybody in the hospital picked. And he was a lovely man. I still see him from time to time. And I ended up with every intervention under the sun. So, 20, 21 years old, giving birth. The doctor's saying my baby's big, quote unquote big. The day before my due date, let's induce you. So I signed up for an induction. I had, every single thing possible there was to have. And by the end of 18 hours of laboring, I hadn't made it past 2 centimeters. And so the doctor came into my room at 11 o'clock at night and was like, hey, we can turn all of this off and we can try again in the morning, or we can just do a C-section and you can have your baby in your arms. And I looked at my mom and my mother-in-law who both had C-sections, and they're like, why would you not have a C-section? Like, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So I went into the surgery, and I had an experience it's uncommon, but I also hear women talk about it quite often. The medication didn't work. The anesthesia wasn't working. So I actually started feeling everything during the surgery, and they're like, it's impossible. Like you have had an epidural for hours and you weren't complaining of pain then. And I'm like, you're touching here. And they're like, oh my gosh. So they put me to sleep at that point. And at that point, I thought I was dying. I could still feel the pain even asleep. Like I could hear the sounds in the room. It was a twilight sleep. You know, I was aware of everything that was going on. This was the same hospital that I worked at. So I knew the machine. So I would like stop breathing for 15 seconds to hear the alarm go off to make sure that I was still alive. So it was a total out-of-body experience. It was a life or death experience in my head.
Wow.
Even though it wasn't like really, you know, they weren't resuscitating me or anything like that. But I had a huge pivotal moment. And so I came to and was like, give me my baby. Like, this is the only thing I want. And shockingly, for being 21 years old, stuck her right on my breast, and she latched, and I kind of just faded into this abyss of parenting in the most beautiful way. Like, you know, I really am shocked because now my daughter's the same age that I was when I had her. And I'm like, there's no way she could do this right now. Like, how the hell did I have a baby at this age? But I really stepped into that motherhood role, and it was really beautiful. But like at 3 months of her being here, I was like, that wasn't right. Like something was wrong. I feel like I was robbed of this like rite of passage. And I didn't even know what that meant, but there was just like this deep like knowing and remembering inside of me that like something didn't go the way that it was supposed to go. And so I started reading books, and like back then, gosh, we barely had internet, right?
Right.
2002.
AOL CDs and dial-up.
Exactly. And so I, was like trying to resource anything I could. And I came across a program that UCSD was offering, and it was for childbirth education. And I signed up for it. So when she was 1, I went in and just literally was like, this is a whole new world for me. I'm going to save everybody from the experience that I had. And so I came into this as a savior. And that's actually one of the worst things to come into this career as, because you can't save anybody. Like everybody has their own sacred rite of passage. It's all their own sacred contracts. Can you educate women to have a different experience? Yes. But like, me personally, I'm not going to save anybody.
Right.
But it led me to journey down the path. So I was in the hospital, I was teaching all these classes, and then these women would go talk to their doctors about their choices that they had, like quote unquote choices. And the choices, they were like, the doctors were pissed. They're like, why are you even teaching them this? And I'm like, why aren't you practicing research-based medicine? Like that should be the real question here. And so I got into this place of, kind of being disheartened by it. Like it wasn't a place of like, I'm empowering women. I was going to births at that point as a doula. So I was in the hospital room, and I really felt like an accomplice to a crime. Like, because it's not like I can fight the hospital staff. It's not like I can be the voice of the family that I'm with. Yeah. I can empower them and educate them and say like, maybe that's not what you want, or let's have a minute to talk about it. But I can't, I'm not their power of attorney to say that, Yeah. And so I was like, this isn't what I want. Like, I'm actually not saving anybody, and this is horrible. And I'm witnessing all the same crap that happened to me. And so I went into lactation at that point, opened an amazing breastfeeding clinic at the hospital, ran it for a couple years, but I would walk into postpartum and I'd look at the board and everybody's name was on it. And there was like a brief description of the birth. And I immediately knew who was going to need extra help breastfeeding. It was like C-section, 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 induction, induction, induction. I'm like, oh, they're all going to be in the clinic today. Yeah. So I was disheartened again. I was like, if we eliminate this, then they're not going to have these sort of breastfeeding problems. And so right around that same time, I had a mentor that was opening the first state-accredited midwifery school in California. And she was like, Lindsey, like, come on, like this is for you. So without even hesitating, I jumped straight in and was the first graduating class and went straight into home birth. And so I felt like that was the big shift for me. Like I really was able to like give women their power back, like we weren't like deciding how we were going to fight against the system. Like the system had actually dissolved and they were creating what they wanted. Yeah. And so it brought me, this was 21 years ago, like this was at a place where the birth industry, if you look at the last 100 years, really, like, in the 20s, birth got brought to the hospital. Prior to that, every single woman had their baby at home.
Yeah.
And like, you have to like think like that's not long in terms of human evolution. That's a very blip of time type of conversation, like it's nothing. And so
Right.
in the 1920s, all moms had scopolamine. They were all completely knocked unconscious. They had no recollection or memory. All the babies were drug out by forceps. The forceps rate was close to 50 to 60%. At that time, why do you think cord clamps were invented? Because the mom was drugged. There was no place for the baby to go. If you cut a cord that's pulsating, you're going to squirt blood all over the room. So the doctors had to come up with a system to put a clamp on it. So then the baby could go to the baby nurse and be taken out of the room. Like it's kind of like this barbaric way of thinking. And so
holy cow,
we go from the 1920s, and then there's this like feminist liberation movement. Like, I don't want to feel the pain of childbirth. Give me all the drugs.
Yeah.
And then we start to come back to like, wait a second, maybe that's not what we want. And I will totally credit Ricki Lake. I'm sure you're familiar with who Ricki Lake is.
The business of being born.
The business of being born. And I love Ricki. She's a good friend of mine. And she really changed the movement of birth at that point. So that was made 17 years ago.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. It feels like yesterday.
Yeah. But all of the information is still relevant. Like, I still tell people to watch it because it's such a good movie in terms of the statistics and how much better off you are being informed and making appropriate choices and knowing that most interventions actually aren't beneficial unless we need them. And so I watched this tidal wave at that time, and I'm like, this is great. Like, we're going to really start to shift things. And it happened slowly. Like it did.
Yeah.
Like, it was like the water it was sucking out, and then there was this wave that was coming.
Yeah.
And then, through all the years, and then I had my son, he was born in the backyard in my jacuzzi after that cesarean experience,
My new amino acid supplements come in flavorless and lemon water, and they're flying off the shelves, and here's why. I have meticulously sourced these vegan fermented essential amino acids from Japan. I am so proud of this being made the Be Well way, with maximum quality and minimum ingredients. My flavorless is simply those vegan fermented essential amino acids from Japan. Our lemon water contains minimal ingredients of only organic lemon powder, organic citric acid, and organic monk fruit. No natural flavors, no artificial flavors, no artificial sweeteners, no emulsifiers, no additives. This is simply that nutrition targeted for your goals. If you want to give my Be Well protein or aminos a try, or restock it if you're already loving it, take advantage of my gift for podcast listeners. Code PODCAST10 is going to get you $10 off just for being a listener. Write it down and shop with me after you listen. This episode is brought to you by Costarina, a Mediterranean wellness brand I'm truly obsessed with. I love healthy fats, and let's be honest, quality cooking oils are hard to come by. And that's why I'm such a fan of Costarina's extra virgin olive oil. It's made from 100% Koroniki olives, harvested early in southern Greece and cold pressed to lock in their flavor and nutrition. Because the olives are picked before they're fully ripe, the oil is packed with polyphenols, those powerful antioxidants that help fight inflammation and support long-term health. And fun fact, it takes about 12 pounds of olives to make just one bottle. The flavor is bold, peppery, and so fresh. It's completely changed how I think about olive oil. When I first tried it, I thought, oh wow, this is what olive oil is supposed to taste like. It's made my meals both more delicious and more nutrient dense. It's only sold in safe, opaque glass bottles, never in plastic, because light and plastic degrade the quality. And the packaging, it's gorgeous. I leave the bottle out on my counter because it's that pretty. Beyond olive oil, Costarina also makes flavored olive oils, aged balsamic vinegars, fruit vinegars that I love in my mocktails, organic snacking olives, and even clean skincare. My house is full of Costarina, and yes, I even carry their single-serve packets for travel. If you'd like to learn more, I had a great conversation with Katina on the podcast. We dive into the science-backed nutrition of olive oil, her entrepreneurial journey, and tips for using the oils and vinegars to elevate your meals at home. So if you're ready to try it, use the code Kelly for 15% off your first order at Costarina.com. Not sure where to start? Shop all my favorites at Costarina.com/BeWell. Don't forget to save with the code Kelly. These products I truly use and love, and hope you experience them for yourself. You're going to love it. Well, let's go to that, because I think for my audience, they know that Sebastian was such a traumatic birth that, like, I had all the right intentions. I did the hypnobirthing. did the home laboring, went into kept pushing off induction, was being pushed into inductions because I was a geriatric pregnancy over the age of 35.
Which is total bullshit.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
They're pushing me to induce. And I was proud of myself for being strong to that point. I was 41 and 6 when I went into labor.
Which is kind of unheard of in the hospital situation. Most women are induced within that 40th week of pregnancy.
She wanted to induce me at 38 weeks or 39 weeks because of my age. She kept saying my baby was big. Mind you, I had gained less than 30 pounds with Sebastian. And I'm like, there's no way I'm delivering a 12-pound baby. And I think at that time, you're getting your ultrasounds and people think they're 100% accurate and there's no variance. And a variance of 10, 15% could be 3 pounds, I think people don't even realize that. And, I pushed it off till 41 and 6 and I did go into labor the day I was supposed to be induced. I was supposed to go in that night. And then that morning I woke up and was like, eggs, avocado toast. What was that? But I think there's the traditional system makes women really afraid of their own body and fearful that we can't do it or that something's going to go wrong. And, you're talking about the 1920s and women being, most of the babies being born at home before it was brought into the hospital and you're knocked out. People will say, well, how many of those women died in child labor and how many of those babies died? And that, that is the largest fear, right? That any mother and baby has. And I think that perpetuates itself through social media and through, the traditional Western medicine culture. And, I think I started to feel really nervous, oh gosh, I guess I will have to have this induction and and then my body did go into labor and it was great. But the minute I got to the hospital and the bright lights went on and I was under the blue light and feeling everything and had kind of gotten out of the sanctuary of my home as a first laboring mom, all bets were off. I stalled out for 4 hours and was convinced to get an epidural so that I could progress. Basically told, I'm either going to give you an epidural or I'm going to take you to a C-section.
Yeah.
And, my mom, like yours, my mother-in-law actually had 2 vaginal births and breastfed immediately after. And it really worked out for her. My mom had 3 C-sections. And I remember her doctor telling her she doesn't have the pelvis for natural labor.
Which is insane.
Her pelvis was, I remember her telling me because she is narrow. My mom is narrow, my youngest sister, Chrissy. They're just not a boy body, but they are straight up and down. And my mom was like, oh yeah, Dr. Guevara told me that I didn't have the pelvis for it. And so he let me try for a few hours, but then he just took me to a C-section. So I don't think you should waste your time kind of a thing. That was in my brain prior to everything. Oh, do I have the pelvis for it? And in hindsight, I think I just was scared. Yeah. And getting into that hospital room with those lights on, I felt more scared. You're then all of a sudden well, hook me up to the machines and tell me that my baby's okay and tell me, and then they're beeping at you and screaming at you and then your body's not doing what you want it to do. And just everyone seems worried / stressed out for you, not calm for you. And then it was 4.5 hours of pushing and a transfer to CHLA for Sebastian and me basically beating myself up after being I'm never going to let that happen again. Yeah. So whereas I feel you educated yourself in a place where you became powerful in your ability to have a natural birth in your backyard with your second, I had a trauma response that was I need a doctor that's going to just not let me do what I want because I don't trust myself, and someone who's going to make me feel safe. And I did. I found that, Dr. Carmardian at Hogue, she tells no nonsense.
Yeah,
I
know who she is.
She just tells you what you're going to do, exactly. And Tashin came out, she did induce me. She broke my water. I pushed for 6 minutes. Yeah. Tashin was here. He was crying. He was healthy. He was on my chest, and that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful to her for that experience because I did. I couldn't get out of that trauma. I don't think I ever... And to this day, people are listening to the podcast. They're yeah, you mentioned Sebastian's birth a lot on podcasts that aren't about birth. And I'm like, still going to work on that.
Yeah.
still going to process
It's
that.
a huge part of you. It doesn't leave you. Like it actually creates who you are. It creates the mom that you are. It's a rite of passage.
Totally.
We don't forget those rite of passages.
Totally. And what's so weird about it is I can look back to like those 12 hours at my house and I don't feel like they were 12 hours. I feel like they were 12 minutes.
Yes.
And I remember feeling so proud of myself.
Yeah.
Like so just like, I am a lioness, hear me roar kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then totally like, when I got to the hospital, and it's just, I think what's hardest for so many people in birth is that so many things can come up. Like you can get thrown into a C-section, you can get, thrown a curveball, you can have to, I have had friends who've had like bleeds that require like infusions and, separation from their child, inability to breastfeed, like all of these drugs they didn't want, like all these things happen and you feel so out of control. But what I'd like to share on this podcast is that like, because you threw yourself into the education of it, you got to a place where you were comfortable enough to take it on at your house and then have like a healing rebirth as a mother with your son.
For sure.
So can we talk about what it took for you to get to that place? Like how many births did you see at home and what made you feel safe to do that at home in your backyard?
So I actually think it was a disadvantage of me witnessing births because I started midwifing myself at that point. Like, when I was in labor, I was like listening to his heartbeat and I was doing all these things. And I was like, no, I'm not a midwife right now. I'm a mom that's giving birth.
Yeah.
And so I really had to take myself out of that place. Like I had to go and find my cave. I like went upstairs and away from everybody in my bedroom and like found this like dark little place where I like really had to surrender and let go. And I think the surrender and let go was the biggest part for me is because I had all these expectations. it was 6 years in between my kids. So, in that 6 years, I had seen so much. And I was really in this space of like, okay, like the world's waiting to hear, and not really the world, but my little world was like waiting to hear about this super successful birth. And I was in my head so much about it. And I got to this place where it was like, it doesn't matter. Like it's me and my baby right now. Yeah. And so I was like holding my belly and like having a really good cry. And I felt my son's name is River. And God, if you ever name your child River, be careful because they are a force to be reckoned with. Remember, they cut through mountains with their strength. And I felt this baby inside of me that was not in a good position. And I felt him move when I had that surrender. So I felt him move across my belly and really engage in my pelvis. And then it was like game on. But I don't think if we had that moment that would have even happened. And I was like stuck in my head, like, can I only get past 2 centimeters? Like the doctors told your mom, it was like, your pelvis is too small, your baby was too big. And then I had a baby that was a pound bigger than my daughter. So, when you hear those things, you really have to question, like even, doctors will say like, oh, let's take an x-ray of your pelvis. Like that doesn't show when you're in labor. That doesn't show the hormone relaxin that's working in your favor. If you're feeling safe, everything's going to soften. Like imagine taking a poop. I know it's funny as it sounds. Like if there's somebody staring at you and saying poop, you're not going to poop. But if you're like alone and quiet and in your bathroom and your body relaxes. And it's the same exact thing for birth. Like we have these sphincters that close within our systems. And, everybody thinks the anal sphincter, but no, like the cervix is a sphincter. And I will always say that the vagina is a sphincter. And if we don't have that feeling of safety, those stay shut. For a primal reason, right? If we were in a cave and there was a lion outside, we would want to stay shut or we would want to run and find a safer place to be. But that fight or flight, like no one realizes how important the nervous system plays into birth. And so, as I traversed through that with my son and ended up, it was so beautiful. It was the middle of summer and I gave birth under the stars and it was right as the sun was setting. And it was this whole experience.
Wow.
So different.
Making me want to have a fourth.
Right? I'm just 5 minutes from you too, Cal. And so, I look back at both births and like both were transformative, but my daughter's birth was more transformative for me. Like obviously having a home birth and moving through all of that was so huge and so amazing. But like, had I not had the experience of my daughter, I wouldn't be here today. I've witnessed probably close to 2,200 women give birth. And I would have never, I wanted to be a pediatrician. I wanted to hold the babies. I wanted to save, all these sweet babies and, help parents through that. But with birth, it's like, no, like, in order to sit in that space, it's just such an honor. Like, to me, there's nothing more holy in the whole entire world. And it's unfortunate because the hospital kind of leaves that place out.
Yeah.
But it is the most miraculous thing that ever happens in our lifetimes, right? And so to be able to be invited into that space, like I really always say, like, I'm at the convergence of heaven on earth. And so every time, like, regardless of the outcome, like if a mom has to transfer into the hospital, like, it still is this portal that's opening for this miracle to happen. And so if I didn't have the experience of my daughter, I wouldn't be, on my knees in gratitude to what I've been able to experience in my life and who I've been able to witness and the lessons that I've learned from all these amazing families and these amazing babies. Like, if I just even bring up the point that babies have awareness, and that was one of the main reasons I became a midwife, is because I was in the hospital setting witnessing these births. And the way that they were treating these babies, which is routine. This is what they're taught. They're not, the nurses and doctors aren't bad people. This is the routine of what they were taught. Like, any separation of baby, anytime a baby's in a warmer, getting rubbed down by rough blankets and not on their mom's skin to skin. I mean, we know that the chest of the female rises 10 degrees right after birth in order to warm that baby. You don't need a baby warmer.
Yeah.
Like, look at current day places in Africa. There's an amazing neonatologist in Africa, Dr. Niles Bergman, and he talks about all the time, like, we have nothing. There's no technology where I practice. And he's like, I can have 27-week, 28-week babies that do just fine doing kangaroo care with their moms. Like, technology isn't serving us in those areas. And so when I was witnessing these babies, I'm like, they don't have a voice. They're not even being talked to, they're just kind of in the corner over there. And so that was part of my whole mission, was to really incorporate babies' experience of birth into, like, hey, welcome to the world. This place isn't scary here.
Right.
Like, this is a place where you get to be loved, and this is a place where you get to thrive. And what a good way to start life, right? Like nobody even thinks about the attachment issue. God, think about how many people have attachment issues right now, right? Can we bring it back to birth? Can we bring it back to severing the cord before it's supposed to be severed? And all of these things that come along with, the baby leaving mom's chest. And there's so much to it. And it's just, not even a thought. So yeah, there's huge pieces to it. And I'm back to that rite of passage, when your baby was taken from you and your baby was placed in another hospital that was different than where you were at. Yeah. And the guilt that you had, that also corresponds to every single hormone in your entire body telling you that baby you needed to race and be with that baby. And
I was not nice when they didn't want me to discharge. I'll just say that. Yeah. I was pretty fiery version of me. Yeah. I'll say that. Yeah. It's interesting because you've witnessed thousands of births, and I think there's lessons that I want to pull from that. Talking about calming your nervous system, whether someone's doing that at home or in a hospital setting, what advice do you have? I feel like that question is kind of like when someone's stressed and someone's just like, just don't stress. Yeah. And you're like, not helpful.
Easier said than done.
Not helpful. What are some techniques you use to help moms do what you did? Like, get in the quiet, get in the dark. Like, can you talk about some of your favorite modalities for calming the nervous system?
Yes, I think the key word is safety. And I that's like, such a broad term. Like, but what is safety to you might be different than what safety is to me. And that's going to be like that across the board. So when you come into my practice, instead of like walking into the sterile medical field and like you're waiting 3 hours in a lobby and you come in and see a provider for 5 to 7 minutes. That's the nation average for a time that is face-to-face with a care provider, is 5 to 7 minutes. Yeah. So you come into my office. My office is like a house, right? Like, we have a whole like Montessori Waldorf setup for all the kids. Like, sometimes there's literally like 15 children in our office on purpose, right? So I what we call it as our community office. So I share an office with this amazing chiropractor, and we work at the same time because we're always back and forth in between each other's rooms, which is really beautiful because we get the dynamic of the emotional side and this physical side that she brings into it. And it makes a difference. Different things come up at different times. Yeah. And so you come back in and you've already been in the lobby and you're talking to other moms and you're like, oh, wow, I had that experience. That's really cool. Like that you've had that same experience. And so you're already kind of softened into this space. And then you come into my office and it's like, my couch is the crying couch, So we're coming to chat with your girlfriend, like, have to have coffee. But like, there's also this experience of like, immediately you feel safe. And yeah, we do your blood pressure, and yeah, we feel the baby, and yeah, we listen to the heartbeat, but that's like such like 5% of it.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that in that space, that like anything that there's a fear within, it gets brought up. We face it head on, like we like look at it straight in the face. We talk about, benefits and risks and alternatives. And then we get to this place of like, hopefully by the time a woman gives birth, and I would say in my practice, it's probably like 99% of the time that a woman is just so safe within her body. She's so comfortable with her baby. She trusts. I don't bring fear into that space. Like I listen to some midwives obsess over the baby's position or obsess over different things that are kind of meaningless. And I'm like, I will never bring it up. Like if I notice the baby's in a bed position, I'll be like, hey, before you go to bed tonight, let's do 50 cat-cow tilts. Not because you have to change your baby's position and your baby's in a bad position, but like, let's just move your body in this way so your baby gets into a good position.
Yeah.
And so language, huge.
This episode is sponsored by Vuori, my absolute go-to for activewear, loungewear, and effortlessly combined comfort, style, and performance. Whether I'm working from home or working out, Vuori has me covered. Now let me share a few of my current favorites right now. Right now, I'm living in my Vuori Performance joggers, my long sleeve Halo crew neck, my Halo Performance top, and these pieces are perfect for lounging and being able to go to a quick errand or school drop-off. The Halo Performance Jogger is my everyday essential. The fabric is incredibly soft. Seriously, it feels like butter on your skin, and they're part of Vuori's Dream Knit collection, which means they're made with ultra-soft, lightweight fabric with relaxed fit, 4-way stretch, moisture-wicking properties. They're perfect for everything from low-impact workouts to just chasing my boys around the house. So paired with the Halo top and the long sleeve Halo crew neck, I've got the perfect combo for comfort and style that I can wear all day long. And here's the best part. Vuori is offering a special deal for my listeners. Get 20% off your purchase. So go to vuori.com/Kelly to snag this deal, experience the comfort, and let me know what you think. If you're like me, trying to eat cleaner, get more protein, and still actually enjoy what you're eating, you've got to try Maui Nui. They source their meat from wild, harvested axis deer on the island of Maui, one of the most nutrient-dense, sustainable red meats you can eat. It's naturally lean, incredibly high in protein, and loaded with bioavailable nutrients thanks to Hawaii's rich volcanic soil. One of my favorite ways to enjoy Maui Nui? Their venison jerky sticks. Each one has 10 grams of clean protein and just 55 calories with no artificial preservatives, nitrates, or fillers. The original flavor has a subtle hint of natural sweetness, and the peppered is savory with the perfect kick. They come with me on every podcast tape, and I always have that high-quality protein boost on hand. Whether it's during school drop-off, long filming days, or mid-afternoon, I need something now moments, these are my go-to. Right now, Maui Nui is offering a free 12-pack of jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. So just go to mauivenison.com/Kelly and grab yours. That's MAUINUIVENISON.com/Kelly for your free venison stick pack with purchase. You guys are gonna love these. All the protein without that greasy, oily mouthfeel that you're probably used to from beef sticks. It's definitely an upgrade, and you're gonna taste the difference. You remember everything when you're pregnant, especially leading up to the end.
Huge.
It's definitely like an open portal for traumatic labeling conversations where you take ownership over what someone else says about you, and you're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Everything, which people don't even realize, but I'll tell my students, if the battery is dead on the Doppler in labor, don't use the word dead. There's so many things that again, you're in your primal brain when you're in this labor space. You're 12 minutes is 12 hours.
Yeah.
You're in the stars finding your baby, and you hear words like that and you're like, what? So it's just, language is everything. So when a woman enters into this space, we try to recreate that feeling of safety within our home, which is pretty simple, right? It's their home. They're already safe. Hopefully they feel really safe in that space.
Yeah.
And so, right before we started recording, I was telling you I was at a birth last night until 1:00 in the morning. And it was this first time mom. And it was, she did so great. She actually went really fast, and which is her personality, so I wasn't surprised. But then she was pushing for about 4 hours. And I just said to her, go into the bathroom. Like go into the bathroom, turn the lights off, sit on the toilet, obviously a really good place to push. That's where we push in real life. And just like be there for a little bit. And so I heard this noise that I hadn't heard of over the 4 hours of her pushing. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went in, I said, it sounds like you're getting close. Do you want to go back to the tub, which was 5 steps away? She was like, yeah. And she stood up and she's like, actually, the head's out.
Oh my gosh.
And so, it was like, that's what she needed. That was her cave. That was her being able to be in her space of complete safety. There was no performance, and she let go and had her baby. And so it's recreating wherever that feels most comfortable for each woman, and each woman's different. And that's the problem with standardized Western medicine, is that there's no individualized care.
Yeah.
And I think if there's one thing that I want to bring forth with the continuation of my life's mission, is to really incorporate individualized care instead of having blanket, recommendations across the board for everything, not just birth.
Yeah.
Because we have to individualize each person. Like each person has such a different experience, and we can't just say that this works for everybody. And there's not a collaboration of care with any of it either. Like the head doctor doesn't talk to the foot doctor, and it's like
silos.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where you get to come into this holistic space of women like you that understand that and incorporate different things. And you're obviously talking about nutrition, but we're talking right now about safety in our nervous system. So it's like piecing that back together. And I call it the remembering. Like we already all know this. It's just been washed out of us, from school to government to whatever it is. Like there's things that come in that say like, no, I know better than you. And, ignore that intuition and ignore that inner voice. And, by the time that we make it through everything as a child, most of the time it's kind of scary to listen to our inner voice.
Yeah.
And so I find it like, really and truthfully, if I can get a woman through her pregnancy where every time she asks me a question, I can say like, hey, this is my experience. This is what works for a certain amount of women. But how does that feel to you? Like, does that feel like the right recommendation to you? And if it doesn't, like, let's continue to kind of search and see what's going to work best for you, what's going to work best for your family. Is that what's right for your baby?
Yeah.
And when I do that, I called it radical responsibility. Like I will sit and stare a woman in the face in a consultation, and I will say like, I want you to know that I think that you know your body better than anybody else.
Yeah.
You're going to know your baby better than anybody else. And so if that's instilled into them and that goes through the birth process, what do you think it's going to do for parenting?
Yeah. You just feel powerful. You feel like you can trust your gut and have strong boundaries for your children to support them, to give them freedom, for all the things.
For all the things.
Yeah.
For all the things.
It's interesting because it does feel like it's hard to trust your gut. I can think back to being in labor with Sebastian at the part where I hadn't moved into having the epidural yet. Or actually, I think I had the epidural and I was trying to get in a position to push, and I wanted to be on all fours. Yeah. And they were there were cords everywhere, and they were like, what? No. And I was like, I need to be on all fours. And they said, okay. Yeah. And I flipped over, but they were all exacerbated by the fact that I needed to not be laying on my back in the stirrups. The stirrups I couldn't engage in the way that I wanted to. Yeah. And then when I was on all fours, it hurt really bad. I definitely probably was probably progressing, or I don't know. It was just I could still feel it. And I didn't feel comfortable to keep pushing. They kept saying I think we should get back in the right position. We should get back on your back. And
which makes no logical sense, by the way, right? If you have a pelvis if you're laying on it, then you're decreasing your pelvic outlet by up to 33%. That makes no logical sense whatsoever. But it's the right position for them if they're sitting and staring at your vagina with a bright light on it.
Yeah.
Right? They don't know, again, they don't know any different. They're trained that way.
Yeah. It feels like a rush. Yeah. It feels like everything's such a rush. And whether we're rushing to a balloon or is it Cytotec? Or rushing to Pitocin, or we're trying to rush it. Yeah. For time and
I mean, it's money is what it is, because there are beds that need to be filled and then there are beds that need to be turned over. So if you're in labor for 3 days in the hospital, then that's 2 moms that could have had their babies, which was an extra $30,000 revenue per mom to the hospital. And then it's about control, castor oil, fantastic way to induce labor if you've already had a baby. opt for intervention, but I think it's amazing that we have options if we need it, right?
Right.
And so a hospital would never do that because they can't go in and, push a button and turn it up or turn it off, or it's like all this liability stuff that comes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you even look at the modern way of being induced, and I know some of your listeners are going to be like, oh my God, that was me. So for inductions now, I've been in this field for 22 years now, and I am like, oh my gosh, so much has changed. And so like before, like they'd tell you to come in at 7 a.m. and start your Foley bulb or cytotech or whatever. Now they're telling women to come in at midnight. And you're like, what? Like if you're going to be in labor and you're going to need energy to push your baby out and you're doing one of the physically hardest things that your body's ever done, why would you be up all night? Like, would you run a marathon? Would you show up at the marathon line at midnight? No.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Why do they do that? So that the doctor can catch the baby during the day?
It's usually during lunch or, at the end of office hours. And so it's really convenient for the hospital staff. And they're more staff during the day. Like there's more staff during that day shift.
Oh my God.
And so, I mean, this is like a common thing. Like it's everybody shows up to the hospital
being induced
at midnight. Yeah. And so like, that's not individualized. That's not even common sense. That's just horrible, And so you take a step back and you're like, okay, how can I make this my own individual experience, regardless if it's at home, regardless if it's at a birth center, regardless if it's at a hospital. Yeah. And so that's where you go and you seek different options and you educate yourself. And, there's so much information out there now. Like there's almost too much information out there. Yeah. Where it can become so overwhelming. But you like kind of go through and you like see what works best for you and what doesn't work best for you. What about your family? Like what does that mean to your family? Like how does your husband feel? Does your husband feel empowered in the situation that you're going to choose like that? Or is there an issue there? And so those are all super relevant conversations that we need to have to come back to that really big keyword, which is safety. Yeah. Like physiologically speaking, our brain waves don't even respond to the receptor sites of the hormone. It's a hormonal cocktail, right? Yeah. Oxytocin is what contracts our uterus. If we're in fight or flight, all of those little receptor sites are going to close off. Yeah. And then you bring in Pitocin, which doesn't care if the receptor sites are shut off because they're going to flood it as much as they can. So no wonder why everybody gets Pitocin because they're not feeling safe. It's just this cascade of intervention. Yeah. And so it's part of our common day modern experience of birth. I feel like a lot of women are definitely seeking other options.
Yeah. I feel like post-COVID, when they were like, you can't bring your husband or your family into the room or your doula or your midwife, midwives aren't going to be there. But like when you shut people's relationships down in a setting where you need to feel safe, I think that became like a more popular option.
Oh, it was ridiculous. Yeah. I was getting like 50 calls a day. Yeah. Post every hospital doing weird, crazy stuff. And I was like, there's no way. I mean, I can't take that many clients on, but it was actually disheartening to me because I was like, oh my gosh, what are these people going to do? Like, what are these women going to do? And really, where they really locked down, like New York and stuff like that, like husbands were outside of these hospital windows and these moms were like prisoners, basically. And so I think a lot changed. I think that COVID was a really big blessing to our global awareness of the corruption, if you will, that was going on, because I don't think that people were actually aware of how bad it was. For someone like me that was kind of like in this holistic space before COVID, I never bought into it. I was like, this is whoa, like I can see what's coming. Yeah. But I feel like it just opened up so many people's eyes to their right to choose, really, their right to know that there's other options. And it really did shift the forecast for people taking their power back, which is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like just looking back on my life, like I started out of college at Johnson & Johnson in pharmaceutical sales as my first job. And I felt like a glorified caterer. And I remember learning from marketing, like how to sell a study to make it look like really impactful when it wasn't.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't
it? And then it just kind of felt like, it just felt cheap. And I was like, what am I doing? And it really lit the fire under me to really understand metabolic health and blood sugar balance and preventing illness and like the impacts of pharmaceuticals on the microbiome and all the things, it's been like, it's been a wild ride, but I think that was the start of me feeling a little bit suspicious.
Yeah. That's a good word.
Of just like, what about the financial incentives? Like no one's really, and like in my business, for example, like I'm the sole owner of my company. Like I've self-funded it. I have no one telling me. I don't have a board. I don't have investors. I don't have people looking for, dividend checks or for me to launch the next product. I don't have the pressure of that, of like
beautiful.
Following the money and like having to
perform.
Mm-hmm. And I never have to compromise. I remember like our vanilla protein, like organic vanilla bean went out of stock.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, they have vanilla in, which is like a natural flavor. And I was like, it's okay. Like, when is it going to come back? And they're like, it might be 6 to 8 weeks. And I'm like, so we don't have vanilla.
Yeah. We're
and
sold
like,
out.
Like that, is that a hit to my bottom line? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like you never get your reputation back and you never have the opportunity to like, it's just like, what's the best interest of humans and how are you like providing the best service or product or whatever the case may be. I mean, if I were to go for a fourth, people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what am I talking about? I have 3 crazy boys under my roof. But I want to go back to that pressure because you mentioned castor oil. I think, a lot of people, well, especially in the traditional system, they're going to poo-poo like all the natural wives' tales, as they will be called. But what have you seen in your practice that can be supportive of inducing labor, creating a little bit of urgency and pressure in a mom so that she doesn't have to get to a hospital 0 centimeters dilated and be given the bulb, the Cytotec, the Pitocin, and then taken to C-section?
I think the biggest thing is realizing that like the education that we have as midwives, and every state's going to be different. Like there's 13 states in the United States that don't even have licensure around midwifery. I would say, which California is not my favorite state, but like for midwifery laws, we actually have it probably the best, other than the fact that they took away our twins and our breeches in 2014. But like we're pretty well regulated in the sense that we have all the same supplies as a basic labor and delivery room. So, the training that I have is on normal physiological birth. When I was looking at different midwifery programs, I was like, I want to do home birth. Why would I be training anywhere else? I want to be able to provide women with the experience that they are seeking. So this is where we're going to train. And so it's like thousands and thousands of hours. And there's certain requirements of each thing that you have to learn and do and the skills and everything like that, along with the didactic educational part. And so when we come into the house, like we're coming into the house with a lot of experience, but we're also coming into the house with different pharmaceutical options too. I have all the same pharmaceutical meds that a hospital has for hemorrhage. I have IV supplies. I have resuscitation supplies. I stitch like a plastic surgeon. Like literally I watched OBs, not that I'm in the hospital often, but I've watched OBs stitch and I'm like, oh my God, that's like Frankenstein. What are you doing? And it's because it's fast and easy. They want to get out of there. They're paid for the birth of the baby. They're not paid for anything else, And so to me, I'm like, no, I care about her pelvic floor integrity. Like I'm going to sit here even if it takes me an hour and make sure that she's stitched well. And so, what happened, I'm going to go back to the 20s, is when birth got brought to the hospital. The Rockefeller Foundation was actually the ones that were with all of the medical schools at that time. They learned that petroleum actually could make a lot of medication. So they filtered into the pharmaceutical system really fast. Rockefeller, big name, big money.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
New York, let's do this.
So they went on a smear campaign with midwifery. So they owned all the newspapers at that time. And so basically what they would do is they would run big 1-page ads and they would put the old granny midwives from the South, so the slave midwives, right? Like back then, it was these amazing women that came over from Africa. They had the tradition of midwifery passed down to them. They were the ones that were helping all of everybody in the village or in the towns give birth, right? And so they were like, why would you want this old, dirty granny midwife to deliver your baby when you could come to this flashy new hospital? Now, right around that time, I also want to point out the fact that most OBGYNs, like one of the first OBGYNs that classified himself as an OBGYN, was trained by the midwives in England. Okay, so they had the training of that, but they brought it to this system where they were now using medications and all these different things. And so we had childbed fever at that time. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So women were dying at enormous rates because doctors didn't know that it was important to wash their hands. So they would go from dissecting a cadaver or seeing somebody who had tuberculosis or something in the other room, not wash their hands, and then come in and do vaginal exams. And so there was one doctor that realized, if we wash our hands, we're going to reduce the risk of maternal death. Do you think that the old granny midwives didn't know that? Right? They didn't have these issues. And then this guy was revered as this hero for a simple common sense thing of washing his hands. And so, the common perception that Rockefeller created was this like kind of dirty old midwife that's there to deliver the babies. And if you want to be in the upper common class and, fit in, like you're going to go to the hospital. And so that perception, again, only 100 years, right? That perception kind of carried on over. And so I feel like there's a lot of dismantling of the myths of what midwifery is. Like there's times where I'll call if I ever need to utilize the hospital, and I'll give a report, and they'll say, "Oh, are you a lay midwife?" And I'm like, like middle finger to you.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm a licensed midwife through the California Medical Board, and I have all of this, education, and it's probably more than you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's breaking down these perceptions and barriers of that. So, once you realize that all of that stuff comes into the home, then there's a really big feeling of safety. Like, and I'll say, like, if a mom has just shoulder dystocia, so the head comes out, the shoulders get stuck at the pubic bone. If you're in a hospital with an epidural, there's really not a lot you can do because you're numb, right?
Yeah.
So the doctors are trained in medical school to break the baby's clavicle to get the baby out. Of course, we need those babies out. It's really, really important. Babies can die from shoulder dystocia, right? But when we're at home, our moms don't have epidurals. The only thing I don't have at home is an anesthesiologist in an operating room.
Right.
And so I can change her position. And so I will say time and time again that a midwife is much more better equipped to deal with the shoulder dystocia with a mom that doesn't have medication than an OB in the hospital than with a mom flat on her back. Remember, that reduces the pelvic outlet by up to 33%. I want that 33% to get that baby out.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and I know these probably will trigger some listeners if they've had shoulder dystocias, and it's not that you did the wrong thing, you did the right thing in the moment,
Yeah.
But we get to this place of being like, no, we actually are able to do interventions. Like if we're concerned, like say you had another baby and you're like, there's no way in hell I'm going to 41 weeks again, Linz.
Yeah. My eating 55 dates, taking castor oil, drinking raspberry leaf tea. Does that stuff even work? I did it all. I didn't do the castor oil, but I did all the other things.
Yeah. And I also
the Valley salad in LA, I ordered it like 3 times.
I've had people drive up there multiple times. So yes and no, like there's validity around some of it. Sometimes I think it's placebo effect. And I think that placebo is actually wonderful sometimes.
Yeah.
But like tried and true castor oil, like, it can definitely work. But okay, what are we taking it for? Are we actually being informed that this is an intervention? There's so many things around it. But like if we need to use certain things, then we get to bring in benefit, risk, and alternative. And then my client gets to take the radical responsibility for the choice that they're making. Yeah. Like I never want to be the one that's telling somebody that they have to do something. And can I have a very strong opinion about it? It's the number one priority for my clients, their safety and their baby safety. Hell yes. Hell yes. But I'm not a dictator in their bodies. I'm not a dictator in their care. They're the ones that have that full autonomy. And I find it, if that relationship is there, like we come to the decision together. We're on this, like I say, I'm like the Sherpa carrying the backpack up Everest with them. Like you still have to walk up Everest.
Yeah.
Like I'll be there with you. I've climbed Everest 35 times or 2,200 times. But like you still got to do the work. Yeah. And so you're going to lean into me because we have that trusting relationship and you know that I have the skills and the knowledge, but like also I really trust you and your body. Like what do you guys need in this moment?
When it comes to the personality that you're choosing for a doula or a midwife, like it's funny because I did hypnobirthing and now I'm, I think about it now and I'm so science-minded. I'm like, I should have like done the Bradley method and had like a bulldog doula. Yeah. You know what I mean? To be like my like soccer coach style. Like you've got this,
get in
Kelly.
Your face. Yeah.
And instead of, because I think there was a little bit of a disconnect. Like I was like, oh, I want to be all hypnobirthing
but so
style.
wasn't you.
But then when we like when I started into labor and Chris called my doula and she came over and then she started to do the things, I was like, Chris, get her out of here, dude. And he like made her leave for like 6 or 7 hours of the process until I was like far enough along that I like don't even think I saw her.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because much like you, when you had the pressure of giving birth with your son in a specific way, like I know I had all this experience being a holistic nutritionist and caring about like functional health and just doing things, not like fringe, but doing like going back to like my knowing of like how to take care of my body. And I felt an immense amount of pressure to have a natural epidural-free, easy birth. And I had such a beautiful pregnancy leading up to that. I think a lot of that pressure came in
Of course it did.
at the same time. And I don't feel like I had the kind of like combating pressure to push up against me to be like, you're totally capable of doing this. I was just all up in my head.
Yeah.
Like what's your advice for someone picking their birth team?
It's everything. I mean, it's like who would you marry? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously not as like a lifelong commitment, but truly, like you think about people that are buying a freaking car. They do more research on buying a car than they do about who they're going to allow into one of the biggest rite of passages of their whole life, right?
Yeah.
And so, like for me too, as a midwife, like when people come in to interview me, like I'm actually interviewing them.
Yeah.
Because, doing this over the last 21, 22 years, like I know what's going to work with the way that I practice. I am not your savior. Like if you're looking for that, go find another midwife.
Yeah.
Like the victimhood role is like out. Like that's not where we're going to sit and reside in. Like you need to find your power, because if you don't find it, then this isn't going to work for us.
Yeah.
And so it's just like getting to a place, like if people call me like, can we do a phone consultation? I'm like, no, sorry, I don't offer phone consultations. It's really important to meet you in person.
Yeah.
And so I think, I'm a really good read of character, judge of character. So I find that within that first consultation that 95% of the time I can tell if it's a fit or not. And so I think that, if you are looking to hire a midwife or you're looking to hire a doula, even an OBGYN, even though it's a little bit harder because it's such minimal time that you get with them and they're in big group practices and the chance of having
could have the other one.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's just like, listen to your intuition with it. Like, what no feels like in your body.
Yeah.
Even if it's been washed down, like there still is a feeling like either a tightness in your belly or like a stiffening of your shoulders. Like there's something there where you're like, no, that doesn't feel right. If you're like in a parking lot and something doesn't feel right, you're going to know it.
Yeah.
And I always say one of the best ways to know, like, because people are like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what do you mean listen to my intuition? And so like, if you just sit and you're like, my name is Lindsey, how does that feel in your body?
Yeah.
If I sit and say my name is Kelly, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Super simple, right? Anybody can do it. Like you're driving in a car right now listening to us talk.
Yeah. You're like my midwife is Lindsey.
Yeah.
You're like, how does that feel?
Yeah. Just like what does no feel like in your body? Like if no feels like this, then you're going to know going into any relationship, regardless if it's a birth relationship or a pediatrician relationship, whatever it is, a friendship for your life.
Yeah.
Like you'll know no. And I want to encourage everybody to really listen to the intuition, like coming back to that remembering, like it's in our bones. Like, we have such ancient wisdom. Like we've been doing this for so many thousands of years on this earth.
Yeah.
And so we have to remember that like, this is all, we all have this inner wisdom and knowing. And so it's just like not quieting that inner voice so much.
Mm-hmm.
But, making sure that you're safe with that person is the most important piece of any puzzle. If you don't feel safe with someone, find somebody else who cares. You're not breaking up with them to have them care. You're breaking up with them to do something that's right for yourself.
Right.
And so there's other providers out there. I mean, the same thing goes, like if you're telling me at 30 weeks that you're not happy with your OBGYN, freaking find somebody else. There's somebody else out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that people, especially women, sometimes tend to like really push away their needs. Mm-hmm. And this is not the time to do that.
No. It's not at all. Yeah.
Oh. So you've talked about postpartum before, because obviously like you work with these women for a long time. You create this community of this safety. You've had all this experience doing home births. what does it look like in postpartum? I've heard you say that postpartum isn't 3 months, it's 3 years. I feel that.
Yeah.
Like what does putting the pieces back together look like? And what advice do you have for moms who are like entering that chapter?
Yeah. I mean, putting the pieces back together is the perfect statement for it, right? So birth is like one tiny experience. It's the greatest rite of passage we'll ever have. It's huge. It will blow you wide open. However, like we spend all this time preparing for it, and then we have the rest of our lives, so parenthood, right? And so to me, birth is just prep for postpartum and parenting. And I'm in it right now with teenage years, right? Like I have like a 16-year-old teenage boy, and I'm like, holy crap. And like I think back to my postpartum with him and how that postpartum experience actually helped lay the groundwork for how I parent him now as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And so it's part of this whole process. So, we've established safety. We've established this community practice within my office. And it's just providing a space for moms to be, right? Like the typical OBGYN care, if you're lucky, maybe you'll see your OB 2 weeks postpartum.
Yeah.
But the standard recipe is you'll see them at 6 weeks. There's no check-ins. There's nothing. There's some hospitals that are starting to have nurses call and check in. You're supposed to see a pediatrician within that time. Mm-hmm. But the pediatrician's there for the baby, not really checking in on you. And so the pregnancy is that recipe that you get to set yourself up for success with. Like this is where you're like actually not in that like beta brain where you're just operating 1,000,000 miles per minute. Like you're going into the alpha brain and your feminine brain, and you're slowing down. Mm-hmm. And you're taking a breath, and you're like going to start cooking. You're going to start preparing meals. You're going to start like going outside and just standing in the grass before you have your baby and just slowing everything down. When women say that they're going to work up until the day they give birth, I'm like, hell no, not in this practice. Mm-mm. Because that is not allowing yourself to be in a space to open up that female alpha brainwave in order to give birth. But like, I remember driving at the end of my pregnancy being like, this doesn't feel right. Like, I don't even want to drive. It doesn't feel safe. There was like too many moving things at one time, you know? And so once we really allow ourselves to be in that space and prepare during the pregnancy, then usually it sets us up for postpartum. Now, not all the way, because postpartum rocks your world every single time.
Yeah.
When you're nursing a baby at 3:00 in the morning and you feel like your nipples are falling off, like, what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
And so it's just making sure that you have a system in place, be it your husband, be it your mom, be it a neighbor, whatever, whoever it is, that you feel like you have somebody that you could call during that time. Now, in my practice, my clients call me. Like, if there's something that comes up that's like they're needing extra, that's what I'm there for.
Yeah.
And that's pretty unique.
I'm like, that is not normal.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. Like everybody has my personal cell phone number. I have boundaries, trust me. Like you don't call me at 2 a.m. unless you're dying.
Yeah.
But to be able to have that person to reach out to is just, it's really special.
Yeah.
And then it's just a confirmation of being like, this is normal. This is normal. You've got this, like, how can we support you in any way? But like, remember, this is normal. And so I think when these women come back into my office, so I see them the first week in their home, and then they come back in at 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 6 weeks. And then, that 6 week is like the official last appointment. And I'm like, I don't say goodbye.
Yeah.
Like I'll see you in 2 more weeks, like a lot of my clients will continue to see the chiropractor too for their babies. And so I see them, every 2 to 3 weeks. And then I'm in the chiropractic office, like weighing the babies and checking in. And it's just like a whole person experience. It's not like, okay, well, shop's closed.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like this is midwives for all of time were the family physicians. Like, we call it cradle to grave. We call it womb to tomb. Like they were the ones that watched every baby be born in the village. They helped with any sort of remedy in between, the beginning and end of life. And then they assisted people at the end of life. And that's how I practice. It's, birth is just one tiny little piece of it. Not that I'm pro anything that has multiple letters, but the World Health Organization actually recognizes that there's a shortage of 900,000 midwives globally. They have a profound statement that basically says that they recognize midwives as the like family physician, not in those words, but in those words. And, they know that there would be a massive decrease in maternal and infant death if there was more midwives that were trained in order to provide the level of care that midwives give. And again, take it back, 100 years ago when everybody was giving birth at home. This is the type of care that they were getting. They were getting that individualized care. They were, their granny midwives were washing their hands before coming into the house, just kind of like they were like just the glue of the community, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, if you could wave a magic wand, I mean, obviously, like you look back at the 1920s and they did the one-page ads, like basically, like it almost feels like a status symbol, right? Like go have a fancy delivery in a hospital, and like that. Then came the formula, and it's like go, don't use breast milk. This is so much better for your baby, and like
here's some corn syrup.
Let's
warm it up.
Oh, don't get started. Like go, like it just feels like we've been marketed to and marketed to and marketed to. It feels like, at least for me, that there is an awakening happening and people are waking up to their own power, and they're educating themselves, and they're able to make informed consent decisions.
Yeah.
And so if you could wave a magic wand for the future of midwifery and labor and delivery, like what would you hope for the younger generations who are going to be getting pregnant and having babies?
That's a big question. I feel like we need to start preconception. I mean, the biggest thing, like you talk about microbiome and you talk about like nutrition and all of these things. Like if that's not in place, like we're a really sick population. Like the United States is a really sick place. Like I just spent a month in Europe with my 2 kids, and you're like looking around and you're like, yes, sure, some people aren't healthy, but like it's a completely different world. Like the food that they're eating over there is like, there's not even a comparison to the taste of what real food tastes like over there compared to here in the United States. So it's this multifaceted approach that we have to take to actually start addressing health from preconception, because if we look at the sperm rate, what they're forecasting the sperm rate to be, they're forecasting the sperm rate is going to drop to 0% by 2045 if we're on the same trajectory that we're on now. That's 20 years from now. That is my children that is your children having kids.
I know.
Like whatever you can do at this point with your children to ensure that they're not having, synthetic fibers next to their genitals, that they're not having crappy poisonous food in their bellies, that they're not having all these microplastics that we're basically swimming in, do it. Because if we don't start addressing these things now, then we're not going to have grandkids.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, like that preconception piece that we like, that's super important, because regardless of what I say for the pregnancy and birth, if we're not able to conceive, who cares? Right.
Yeah.
And so, the other piece is really coming into a place of like having joy around all of this. Like that's a really, really important thing. Like how many people do you know that are in IVF struggles right now?
Yeah.
Right.
If they're not, like it does feel really heavy to be joyful about it, because so many people are suffering and like having infertility issues and multiple losses, and you don't celebrate in the same way because you feel bad. You feel bad.
Yeah, your heart aches for all these people. So,
yeah.
And then, what I find is usually these women that have been through these IVF struggles and they like actually let go of the stress and they let go of all this pressure that's placed on them. They have a baby in their arms and then they're pregnant.
I know. Without, what do they call it? Twiblings?
Yeah, without, having to use reproductive technology. And so, it's just like knowing that as you're coming into this space, the more joyful you are, like have fun, be in love. Like, that's what the whole purpose of all of this is. And so I feel like to address the whole magic wand picture, like it's like, okay, preconception, like conception, like are you consciously conceiving a baby? Like I believe in spirit babies. I've had multiple dreams before about babies coming to me in my dreams for clients, and I know they're pregnant before they know they're pregnant.
That's crazy.
And so, if you tune into it, sit with a journal and like write a letter to your future baby. Like, I'm here to welcome you. I'm here to love you. Like, I'm here to let you have freedom. I'm here to help you grow. Please come and teach me, know? And that's such a piece that's just kind of forgotten about in our lives. Like we're busy and we're doing a million things per minute. But
you're like, house, check, baby, check.
Yeah. And it's like,
job, check.
Once you slow down, it's just like such a different experience. And then I think just options for pregnancy, for birth, like for women to just have options of knowing that like, they feel informed, they feel empowered, they feel safe. They're with people that are using the right language. And then that community that comes in postpartum, like that's everything. You have to have community. We've always raised our babies in a village. You think about before we had houses and this nuclear society, like we were sitting around a fire and we were singing, and our auntie was there and our sister was there and our grandma was there and our mom was there. And, the men were off hunting sometimes. And, that's how it's always been. We never did this alone.
Yeah.
We never did this alone. We had, the baby was crying and you were tending to your toddler, like your sister came and picked the baby up,
Yeah.
And so that's a really hard place for, I think, Western women to navigate.
The loneliness of postpartum when they're isolated in their homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I loved baby group, my mommy and me group. I would even say like now with my kids in school and first in Tyke, we have a phenomenal group of families from our school that is just like our core unit. And it's like, we'll meet you at Doho. Let's bring dinner and let the boys surf, and everybody's in nature together. And you just like pick up your friends' kids and everybody's just
the best.
Watching out for everybody. And it's a really sweet time.
Yeah. And you can create that, because I promise you, like if you're listening, you're like, God, I don't have that at all.
Yeah. You got to put yourself out there.
Women desperately seek that on so many levels. But if there's not somebody out there that's creating it, then everybody just kind of like wanders around alone. But it's so easy to create that in the community. Like just go to the park.
Yeah, I know.
Start talking to some moms, like just get their phone numbers, text them. Like, how can we get our kids together? And then you'll be surprised how fast everybody just, it's magnetic at that point.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, Lindsey, this was such a special conversation. I feel like you give people the strength, security, and safety to explore different birth options, and really the history of, and that's created such an amount of self-confidence in you and the women you work with that it like really reverberates into our community. And I'm so lucky that you were able to come on the show and share your knowledge and kind of like open people's minds to the possibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think I'm done, but you make me kind of think about a fourth just for that jacuzzi baby bath.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest regret is not having more kids. They're the greatest blessings ever. There's nothing that's more important than our children.
We're like, but do you keep multiplying and then you feel like you're failing all of them?
You run out of arm space.
Like, I have one on each leg and one climbing on my back. I'm a human jungle gym at this point. Yeah. I'm like,
especially with boys, man.
Dog pile. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, where can people follow along? Where can they learn more?
Yeah, best place to find me is my website, which is theremembering.com, and then Instagram, which is just my name, and I'm sure it'll be posted underneath show notes on how to spell my last name, but it's at Lindsey Meehleis.
Perfect. Thanks, Linz.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Be Well by Kelly Levesque podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review in your favorite podcast app and subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. We're also excited to share that full-length video episodes are now on YouTube and Spotify, so you can watch along as you listen. The best way to support me and the show is by sharing it with your friends and family. Your recommendations make all the difference. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson. The video is recorded by Luke Rodriguez and edited by Jesse Trout. Sound mixing is by Mike Fry. See you next time.
The content of this show is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for individual medical or mental health advice and does not constitute a provider-patient relationship. As always, talk to your doctor or healthcare team first. Shout out to the Newport Beach Pendry for hosting us. I'm so grateful to record in such a beautiful space that truly elevates the podcast experience for myself and my guests. From the stunning design to their incredible hospitality, it's a perfect setting for meaningful conversations and creative energy. Hey, thanks, Pendry.